kilometers from there. And that was like 83 years ago. The first time I saw Hitler, I was about 4, I figured out. The whole town was sitting around the town square, very tiny village in Bavaria, Germany. And everybody was waiting for something. I was just a little kid. I was tired. I wanted to go to bed. And all of a sudden, there was all this commotion, and this car drove in. A big car it was open, and this gentleman in a brown uniform stood up, and everybody shouted, "Heil Hitler! Heil Hitler!" And my mother was trying to. I was sitting on my father's lap. My mother was trying to put his arm up so we don't wind up in the concentration camp or someplace. And this guy in the uniform talked for a long time. That's the first time I saw Hitler. About 7 months later, I stood on the street corner, September the 5th, 1939, and watched, that always makes me cry, the young men of the town march off to war, singing. They were singing and marched off to war. Most of them did not return. 23 immediate family members of my family died in the war, including my mother. She died in a bomb attack just 2 months before the war ended for us in 1945. And we lived, like I said, in a little town. My father was the blacksmith. Besides the doctor, we were the only non-farmers in town. I knew the names of all the cows in town because my father would take me when he took care of the hoofs of the oxen. We had about 7 kilometers away a little Jewish village, Buttenwiesen, and it was very much like our town. You have the town square, you have the church, the graveyard, and the farmers. Here it's a little different. I noticed flying over this country that there's a farm and then there's all that land. But in Germany and in Europe, it's mostly all together. In the Jewish town was the same thing, the synagogue, graveyard, Jewish folks. Now, they weren't farmers, they did business with the farmers.
Oh,
and
we his friends that work here, guys. Not to interrupt, but someone has taken notice of us and is calling his friends.
Maybe he'd like to hear or somebody.
Come on over, we have candy.
Okay, well let's
just let them be.
Caecilia.
Well,
we've got
I don't have to make that. Unless you tell me to shut up.
No.
No. We're here to listen to
Sent
Caecilia.
us. Yes. I just
Thank
don't want
you.
to have problems with.
We'll take care of it, don't worry.
But that's how the two communities work together. Jude Weishaupt, he came around every once a week to all the farm ladies and bought their eggs and
Cheese and such.
you sound like you lived there. And the next day, Nussbaum came and hung his bicycle, 3-wheel bicycle, and all those beat up suitcases. And he knew when the farm ladies had their egg money, see, that's when he would sell them everything from sewing machine needles to romantic novels to curtains to. And Jude Schnell, he would only trade in horses. He would not be seen in a cow barn. But then there's Weimeyer, he would buy the cattle for the big city slaughterhouses. And that's how the economy worked. And all of a sudden what happened? People were disappearing, and the card games. On Saturday night, the card games were at the local bar. On Sunday, they were in some Jewish house. I always got to go with my father because it was different in a Jewish house. The food was different, was really good. And the card game was different, and I was called Chicksa. and things changed, and it was bad. And by the end of the war, some of them came back, but a lot of them didn't. And
Cece, what was it like when they came back?
well, the local farmers took care of their houses, their yards, their livestock. We had a brewery in town, was owned by Jewish family. Einstein and Emslander was two family, and one of my uncles was the brewmaster, and another uncle was delivering beer all around the area. And the family gave my uncle, the brewmaster, 50,000 marks and told him to take over the brewery and manage it. And they said, we don't know if we will be back, but you take care of it. They did come back, but only to sell it. They had a palatial home. It's now senior old age facility, and the brewery belongs to the town. And they went back to America. They managed to go to England and to America and came back and took care of things. But mostly the neighbors took care of things. And some of them we never saw again. Birnbaum, the gentleman with the bicycle, he left a suitcase with my mother, and I didn't know it was for safekeeping. I thought she had bought our Christmas present because it disappeared. And after the war ended, I came home from school one day, and we were moving, and my father and sister were looking at this suitcase. There seemed to be no key, and it was locked. And I said, "Oh, that belonged to Jude Birnbaum. He left it with Mama." And they looked like they were looking at a coffin. I remember that. And they forced the lock open, and it was some valuables he had entrusted with my mother, and my father took it to the synagogue. But that's about all I know. That's all kind of what I'm trying to say. No, what I really wanted to say. I went through that 80 years ago. I don't want to go through it again.
Yes.
The Germans got over it. Why can't we?
What do you think is different here in the United States, where it's blossoming here and not in Germany? Because it is spit
It's
upon in
stupid
Germany.
because they didn't know how it was.
Yeah.
They had
Because
no
nobody
clue.
wants to accept the truth of this country's history.
Yeah, that's true.
Until you have truth and reconciliation and you teach the right history in schools, people are going to continue to believe revisionist history that's hateful and sows fear and enmity between people. In Germany, they teach their kids, this is what happened, this is what your ancestors did. You didn't do it, but you need to know what they did so you never repeat it. They don't do that in schools here. They don't say we killed the Native Americans, we enslaved the black people, and we massacred Chinese workers on the railroads. We don't admit these things. We don't talk about Japanese internment.
It's like cosmetics over with
Yes.
the Americans and the
Exactly. And that's why people can go ahead and create this revisionist history and convince people, because the real history is not being taught.
That's right. Real history should be taught.
When you speak English good, you can say that.
Your English is beautiful. Your English is beautiful.
Chuck's just talking to him. It's on. Hey, wait, Rebecca, it's okay. Chuck's on there. He's on your side.
Okay, so who was
You have anything?
you were speaking, right?
Yeah.
Make sure you introduce yourself and all about you.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, come in, guys. Let's come in a little more.
Come in a little more.
Let's come in a